are participating in this series. One of the things that I've done is I've included readings from a text that's covering a lot of the same subject matter as Words of My Perfect Teacher, but that's available for free because I know that, Dharma books are quite expensive and people maybe aren't always in a place where they can purchase a Dharma book. So I try to find things both for those who have the text and for those maybe who would like to make use of resources online. Second thing, a couple of people asked me what's going to be the follow-up to this course. The follow-up is going to be the 5th Dalai Lama's Sacred Words of Manjushri, which is a Lam Rim text, which is really kind of like a Gelug point of view on a lot of the materials that we'll be looking at in this text by Patrul Rinpoche. A few people asked me about what text to use. I just found out today that this text here is actually available in Tibetan, which means that this text is a combined commentary of the 5th Dalai Lama's Sacred Words of Manjushri and His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama's contemporary commentary on that. So I thought folks could maybe contact me and say what they're interested in. Would you want to do kind of a shorter text, just the root text of the 5th Dalai Lama, or would you want to look at it together with a contemporary commentary by the 14th? So let me know what you think, and then I can discuss with our programming team and with Geshe about how to go forward. And on that note, I won't take up any more of your time. Grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee. I'll invite Geshe down and we'll get started. Oops. Sorry. That's better. Okay. So welcome, everybody. Just to get this over with, can everyone hear me clearly? Is that a thumbs up? Okay, great. And can you hear Geshe?
야, 강가 다시 되래.
다시 들리겠습니다.
Okay, great. So we will proceed. As usual, if at any point there are sound issues, don't be shy to, you can either say something yourself or you can let Dave, Abhilash, or Manoshi, our team know, and, we can take it.
Kedrip, is your mic on?
So thanks for coming.
Kedripla, is your mic on?
It is on, yeah.
Okay.
Can you not hear me?
That's much better. But
It was too far away, maybe. I
Or
think I
maybe,
just need to
yeah.
move it closer.
okay.
How's that? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
could you hear Geshe okay?
Yeah. Geshe is fine.
Geshe is fine? All right.
Yeah.
Sorry. It was maybe just too far away. I've moved it
Mhm.
closer to my
Good.
body now.
Okay. Thank you.
That's it.
야, 치료 강가 다시 되래. 따다르 니다테 다니 버와. 다이 저거스야.
Yeah. So Geshe says, Tashi Dele, greetings to all the Dharma friends.
어다 강가 요르 다니 어다 체바 지게 다와 니게 다와 노 요르 노시레와요스.
And he hopes that in terms of your practice, it is like the waxing moon, beginning with the new moon and increasing till it becomes full.
어다 쪼쪼 대단가로서 아니 뭐체 다 기보도 야본도야 대단 니누니 대시 자자에 노게 대시 그게 저와 템보시 더토나 다 될 그게 레와 텐데 자사가레스.
So then in terms of what we're going to be talking about, a lot of it is things to do with our lives, with how to live well. And a lot of it is about how to begin to develop that inner happiness. Nangi deki drupna dene?
어다 또 무긴 나도 세계 대시 세계를 거의 대시를 싫어하시라 보여레와 템보시 자사가 말레스.
And it is really that inner happiness, that mental happiness that is achievable where we should put our attention, because that samsaric or worldly happiness is not really reliable.
어다 노게 세계 돈을 보게 숑바도 이제도 다 보게 내 돈이 다 보게 저와 템보시나 다 되게 대시도 그러 보게 템보지도 요르노야 다르와 침보요레스.
If we, in fact, are able to develop these qualities of love and compassion to the point that we are able to really mix them with our mind, what we will find is that that real and stable happiness feels increasingly within reach.
어다 대리알 당가로서 바디다와 잡히수만 노지레 고세롱 주지 터네바 가텐도 안자바 마시나 사 노지 다가 대시 간데스 데바 이나요 롱요 비티세레스.
And so the glorious Chandrakirti also mentions that it is those times when one is experiencing happiness, those times of happiness when one has freedom or when one has leisure.
어떤 로암단 로아리 튜는이드란 로암 마시 사르네다 마시 부치주 계자마드다 간다고 추주이나요 된다 거가 강가요 아래.
And so all of us, we are in this state of leisure or this state of freedom within the 6 types of sentient beings. We are a human being that affords us all those opportunities. And in that way, it doesn't matter so much what you look like, how big or small you are. Geshe said he's a very tiny person, but those distinctions do not matter because all of us have the leisure of this human rebirth.
어다 미때 여보 미 레바 여보 디다 가르 레가 셰바 이나이 다 셰토비가 다 뽑아 셰토가 요아리라 텔 뽑아지고 그거야 에스.
And on the basis of this human body, with this human brain and intelligence, we need to bring forth a little bit of confidence, a courageous attitude that if I set my mind to this, I can definitely do it.
어다 쪼지데 로조도 가정 망간도 로지데도 만도 살아왔어. 로조도 다 저다 가리 이나요 다 요래 강기 년도대 멀리요 보데 맞세요 보데 된다 첨부지게 된다 달래가 지기 somebody 년도 쪼데 다 가디나 데레세기마레스.
And so when we speak of preliminaries, and you'll also notice that this is common to other texts that we have looked at, such as the recent Lojong or mind training text that was being taught, we'll see that actually right from the beginning, in terms of this first preliminary, it is a recognition and understanding of what we call this precious human rebirth and how it is something very rare and very meaningful.
어다 멀리때는 니바 첨보요 어다 된다 첨보 드기 sombe somba tembo 수준이 디가 다 좀매비가 보게 내가 주주 뭐 지과도요 에스.
And if we think with this human rebirth, I have a special power, a special potential, and if we devote that to a great aim, what we'll see is a lot of the small problems and disappointments will not be able to disturb us.
다시와 가마티게 레카 가르치요메 다디 소소 맞아요 보지 된와서 어떨단 하고요.
And also, when we look at our current situation as a human being, that tells us that in our previous lifetimes, we did something right? We somehow created the cause to have this situation.
shima kawandoto madosa moda tijago mare soso seltan hakuya.
And in the future, if you're wondering where you're gonna end up, you don't need to check a mo. You don't need to talk to an oracle. You just need to look at how your mind and actions are now, and that will tell you.
lele da chita tibino tawa noji ngaroso sel paketende yoare seleka garcheyome masendel.
Again, TV double.
Tibil tawa noji masendino leka garcheyome sel shadi yoare.
So we can reflect on our life, almost imagining our life is like a TV program on the screen. And as we reflect on our actions and our minds, then we will know pretty well where we're going to end up in the future. And of course, we may notice that there are some mistakes in the past, but we don't need to lament that too much, to worry too much, because if we start the good actions from now, we can move in a positive direction. It is said that if we change now in the future using the power of mindfulness, of heedfulness, we will be like a beautiful clear autumn moon that has been cleared away from the clouds. And in order to be able to achieve this, we need a mind that is open, we need a mind that is stable, that is peaceful and relaxed. So we'll just take a few moments to bring the body and mind into that state of peacefulness. And sorry, let me just adjust our sound setting for a moment. Go back. Now maybe you'll be able to hear. You can tell me after the meditation if you heard the chime or not. And think, just like the waves on the ocean, as the breeze decreases, slowly those waves subside. So our mind, because of its nature of pure luminosity, it can see and cognize anything. So create kind of a spacious mind, just like a child that walks into a beautiful temple who is appreciating everything without being too narrowly focused. And direct your mindfulness, your attention inward, and observe the coarse aspects of your body. And observe the subtle aspects of your body. And then direct your attention to what's arising in the mind. Any thoughts or experiences, both coarse and subtle.
소와 대와 등아가르 이나이 고 템보치는 텐데 문디와스 계지 건조한도 되어야레스.
And any feeling that we experience, you'll notice, even those blissful or pleasant feelings, they are not long-lasting. They are momentary. They are impermanent.
소와 대와 이나요 거의 대화될 거 템보치면 아이다 할레웨더니 저파치모 주니라다 리파치모 문디스.
So those pleasant or happy feelings that we experience momentarily, because they are samsaric happinesses, they are not something that is going to last, that is reliable. They're not something to be attached to or to grasp at.
소와 등아가 차이나 템보 주니 텔름 노도 무서게 하면도 거 템보치면 되스.
And similarly, those unpleasant feelings of suffering, there's no reason to get too nervous, too discursive about them, because they will also subside.
이나요 거의 대화돼 somba 라보치니다. 대예비틴을 때네 영모도 만데이다 대시 부서 줘봐진다.
But bring forth this thought. Imagine if I could have this feeling that I get in a little way from samsaric happiness, but instead experience that happiness as something stable, that is completely untouched by the afflictions and lasting.
사매가 대화 템보치 더터바이나 로데용 부서 줘봐 더터 예대용 부서 줘봐 더터 다 던질래가 템보치가
And not only that, if I achieve this uncontaminated happiness, not only will I have my own stable welfare in place, but I will be able to work towards the welfare, towards the happiness of all beings. And in order for this to come about, then, with single-pointed focus, I will make requests to the holy beings. So before we start the prayers, I just wanted to mention something. So because the prayers require a different setting, I put it to setting for musicians. But if people notice a staticky sound or a popping sound, just let me know, and I will turn the setting for musicians off after the prayers. That usually solves the problem. So just keep me posted about that.
There's no popping, but it's much quieter.
Is it? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think what I'll do is we'll do the prayers, and then I will adjust that setting. Is that okay for everybody?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Tembal chom den de jin shepa dra chom ba yan da ba zo pe sang ye je ba dang shab su demba dewa
shakya dubala chazelo chede gyabzu jio Dömba chonden de deji sheba dra chomba yanda ba zobe sangye sheba dan shazu demba dewa sheba jiden kemba jebu dewe kalo gyurwa lana meba ladam minamgi demba sangye chonden de Bedyawa shakya tubala chazelo chede gyabzu jiho Demba chonden de dejen sheba rachomba yanda bazobe sangye reba dang shabzu demba Dewa sheba jiten chemba chebu dewe kalo gyowa lana meba ladam minangi temba sangye chomden de pedyawa shakya dubala chazelo chede gyabzu chi.
We'll recite the 7-line prayer to Guru Rinpoche, and then we'll do the mandala offering and the refuge and bodhicitta.
Ung hoge yogi no chan sam bema gesar dombola yatsen chegim edronye
Refuge and bodhicitta.
sonje
Judan sogi chunam lai Jongchu bardu dani gyasuji Dagi chunyin gibe sunam gi Jola penjir sangi jobar sho Judan sogi chunam lai Jongchu bardu dani gyasuji Dagi chunyin gibe sunam gi Jola penjir sangi jobar sho Sang sum sum Chedan sogi chenam lai Jongchu bardu dani gyabsuji Dagi chenyen gibe sunam gi Jola penjir sangi jobar sho So I'm just going to adjust the setting back so that we can have a better sound quality. Just give me a moment. I think that should help with hearing us a bit more clearly. Can everyone hear me all right? Okay, great.
뭐야 다 가로서 아니 여다 저 내가 제가 된 가로서 뭐예 다 요즘도 나는 와르 주게 생기 요즘 대시 지가 봐 대시 봐도 되는 메시지 리는 더 그거
So what we want to do is to take this human rebirth, this body that we have now, and be able to make it something that can bring benefit, bring welfare to both self and others. Something that is going to be able to bring meaning to all 6 types of beings within samsara.
근데 거의 내용 매봐서야 아니 거봐요 매봐서서 다 먼저 던지질래가 지요
Ultimately, actually, our task is to completely empty the abode of samsara and completely take all beings beyond the state of being korwapa. So I don't know how you would say that, like samsarians, samsaric beings, take all sentient beings beyond that.
다 강가로로 그는 그게 사이 자유 코너로 같이 가서 구바
Yeah. And what we want to do actually ultimately is to bring all beings to be able to abide in a blissful celestial palace. And so for those of you who were in the session yesterday, we talked a little bit about the first steps of starting to build that celestial palace. So because we are trying to accomplish this very great task, then in order to be able to reach the capacity to do this, we need to make sure that we have a path that is both correct and complete. This path must be unmistaken. It must be the best and most perfect path possible. So just to clarify, we begin with a motivation that is extremely vast, right? We're thinking really big. But in terms of getting to the goal proposed by that motivation, this is something that happens in stages, in smaller steps. The Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, through their study and cultivation, they see very clearly that these temporary happinesses of samsara, no matter how much kind of effort one puts in to achieving them, those happinesses will not be meaningful because they are not stable and lasting. And similarly, even within samsara, if our work is aimed at only securing our own happiness, or only securing the happiness of the people who are close to us, or the people who we like, then even that samsaric happiness is going to be more limited. And we can see this very clearly, right, from so many of the instructions of the holy teachers. So then, in order to be able to achieve that stable and lasting happiness, of course, there will be
obstacles. So let us set our intention and our mind, beginning with a state of peace. So in this meditation, we're going to take the mind's object of focus as the rising and falling of the breath. So develop some determination here that if a distracting or an unbeneficial thought or distraction arises, I am not going to follow it. And think that now the body and mind are stable, they are in a state of peace. And developing a vast mind, thinking myself, going beyond that to others, to all sentient beings, every single one of them is close to me. There is none that is a problem. There is none that I dislike. Because I am close to all of these beings, then getting rid of their problems and leading them to perfect happiness are my personal responsibility. In particular, because I have the outer conditions and the inner conditions right now to work towards helping them, it is my responsibility to do so. To be able to really work towards their welfare, that I call the self is limited right now. But if I can lead that is the self, to be able to bring forth bodhicitta, to be able to follow the path of a bodhisattva, and eventually to reach Buddhahood, then I will be of true benefit to others. Bring forth bodhicitta thinking, may I achieve enlightenment to benefit beings. Think, to be able to encounter these teachings for arising bodhicitta rooted in love and compassion, which is the ultimate way to bring benefit to both myself and others, I am supremely fortunate. So we'll pause there. So, of course, reaching this ultimate state through which we can benefit others is not an easy task. We must train in all three of hearing, contemplation, and meditation. And in terms of meditation in particular, we need to engage in both analytical and placement meditation.
So
although the object of ultimate attainment is a little bit far off, maybe it'll be a long way before we reach that. As we start to work towards that, we will experience more and more happiness. It's important to be clear on that. So in order for our placement meditation to be really effective, it's important to train in analytical meditation, thinking about the reason for things. And it is for that reason that we engage in teachings like this, that propose all the reasons for the objects of meditation as a series of stages, as a series of steps. So some scholars, some holy beings have said that, there's this, it's like a Tibetan expression, Zupa Gom, right? Like when something goes wrong, they'll say, meditate on patience. So when you say meditate on patience, if you look at the texts that teach patience really extensively, like the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, for example, the chapter on patience is a series of analytical meditations. It's actually not so focused on placement meditation. So it's like through reasons, right? Through reasons that we come to understand the importance of patience and how it can be used to overcome anger. We're not going to be able to overcome anger and develop patience just by kind of sitting relaxed and blissed out, right? That's not going to work. So if one really wants to bring forth bodhicitta, if one really wants to bring forth the wisdom realizing emptiness, great teachers, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and others have said that this happens through the process of using reason and analytical meditation. So in order for all of this to come about, well, then we are in a relaxed way going to turn again to our text. So it's a text that is beautifully kind of inspiring, right? It's beautiful words, and that also has very deep meanings embedded within it. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just trying to get the English page number for you. So we talked about the vast attitude of bodhicitta. So yeah, we're on pages 7 and 8. Sorry. Ale. Listen. Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about the vast motivation that is necessary to bring forth for practice. So we're actually on these stages talking about the views and how to develop it. Yeah. So we're on page 8.
미밤에바 돈바데 다 가족 뭐시 차가 있어.
And so then in terms of what we talked about last time, we talked about kind of the motivation for practicing the Dharma, which is for the sake of the well-being of sentient beings. And we also talked a little bit about that kind of objectless.
말을 미메 돈바 미밤에바 된밤에바.
Oh, yeah. And we also talked about lack of true existence and so forth.
돈이 걸어와.
Mhm.
다 뭐와 돈바 스타마.
And so as we come to the end of this, it is beginning to talk about a pure dedication.
다 뭐와 되어 아버지 여바 얘는 개와 공시아바데 다 슈체르체르는 야 편도 그래. 세바지르다와 니르다와 노지 다 여러 노지 알았습니다.
And the thing is that when we engage in a positive activity and then we make a dedication, the merits of that activity, they actually increase and increase and increase, like the waxing moon.
다 딩디고를 다 단단히 딩디고 조야메 바시더니 소소를 다 로시 다 브레라기 아레스 계속.
And on the basis of that kind of continuous increase of merit, one will eventually be able to come to an inexhaustible result.
다 되두요 두니 뭐친도 되나 다 알게 좀 먹으면 들어와. 빼나 리라고 계시나. 첩포와 공 너노나. 첩포바지 근로는 자초 친구는 리와이나. 다 빼대자기 아레스. 개왕어야 되게.
So the example that's given for the importance of making a dedication is if we think of the merits that are like water contained in a cup. If we put that cup of water into the ocean, some of it will always abide and it will increase. It's a bit like that.
저 포바지에들 논통 가서 다 거기서 리라워지는 정도 그러와스. 다 자서 치모는 자서는 코 보게 줘대. 자서 치모 마주 바드 베제 또 주고요.
So if on the other hand we drink the water from that glass, then it's exhausted very quickly, right? But we know that if instead we pour that glass into an ocean, into a lake, some of the essence of that glass of water is going to abide for a very long time. It will not be easily exhausted.
단도는 지다 자소치노 지투리 자소 마세 바데 뎀마세 대주 전주 이게 개마용 소주 마토 바데 뎀마세 에서는 주비 수지토 비절 뭐 차와이나 수지 마토 바데 게인주베 소소라 그래.
So Geshe is quoting from the sutras, the essence of which is saying that is if we dedicate a particular virtue, a particular merit to achieving the state of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, complete and perfect enlightenment, some of the power of that merit, no matter how small, will abide until that enlightenment is achieved.
다 배라 아케템바세네 다 디기 단다테던 데와 치모 요기 드니에 뭐지 할때 지지진 일시이스.
And so then related to this, there is the story of a very popular figure called Aku Tumpa. And if there's time, Geshe will share a little bit about that.
다 단다시는 옷 마만도는 옷을 이렇게
Yeah. So Geshe said, well, he's saying that no, it's on your behalf, guys. He's saying Ngodrup complains if we don't cover enough of the text. No, it's not that I complain. It's just that I know that people like to get the text as well. That's all.
다대 알게 잡아 먹게 돼서와. 다 진짜 메타메디나 진년발라고 돈보 년비 츠조. 딜레죠. 끌론도 쪼체데사. 저게도 som바게도 먹게 셔라리 게디즈니 체추 지만로.
So we are on the middle of page 8, and I will read in the Padmakara translation. So I'll read from the text. The way you listen to the Dharma is very important, but even more important is the motivation with which you listen to it. What makes an action good or bad? Not how it looks, not whether it is big or small, but the good or evil motivation behind it.
시바타르니 첸데도 tran데라 손지데 첸더 텐더니 끌론기 치제조 녀종요다비 치스먼로위 동보 칸노더 로데 롱게 끌론지 반더 조체 끌론더 지신 끌론더 지시나 게와 타지 서데 시부침빌롬 세노 체메빈 융오스 저.
No matter how many teachings you have heard, to be motivated by ordinary concerns, such as the desire for greatness, fame, etc., is not the way of the true Dharma. So first of all, it is most important to turn inwards and change your motivation. If you can correct your attitude, skillful means will permeate your positive actions, and you will have set out on the path of great beings. If you cannot, you might think that you are studying and practicing the Dharma, but it will be no more than a semblance of the real thing.
대다를 끌론지 마시나 chi nye lo tong de lo shi chung chi che zu nye tong zhuo yin chi nye di zhi di la go yung ngwa dan yung sha ca chung go wa xie chung ta na ma nen zhi ji de chung ge long xiong ju yi sen ji jie shi ma de ga che.
If you cannot, you might think that you are studying the practice, but it will be no more than a semblance of the real thing. Therefore, when you listen to the teachings and whenever you practice, be it meditating on a deity, doing prostrations and circumambulations, or reciting a mantra, even a single mani, it is always essential to give rise to the bodhicitta.
다 데 양데 베나 야쳔보레스 하고 살아와 아니 개와 체주 세대한테 니빠 체주 로도 만도 세대한테 저 sombi가 손슬라 되는 로베르 마도 그게 시 주니엘라 시 주니엘라
Sunyana-sana?
주니엘라
Shirogagi-netsu.
실로가 통하게 내서
Yeah.
대 체주라 되는 로가 말레스.
So really an important point here, which is that whether a positive action is limited or powerful, in other words, whether it is big or small, it mainly depends on this internal thing of the motivation. It doesn't so much depend on an external appearance, even an external appearance of practicing.
대지 이치 마통하다고 요하래 레라고 요 말레스 그래서 맞잖아.
And so, of course, explaining the benefits of this, it might not be so immediately kind of like apparent or easy to believe in if we're not careful about how we think about it.
빼나 전에 뭐잘 칼라테바도 멋질 칼라테바니 시도잖아 멋잘 칼라테바테 다 배치 this word was.
So to think of a classic example, we can start with, you think of somebody who is giving food to 100 people who are hungry and someone who is giving food to one person who is hungry. Naturally, you would think, right, that the positivity of the action of the person who gives the food to 100 is going to be much greater than the one who gives it to only one person.
다 이나요. 그런想法도 니지想주지 세가 끊는 거는 그런 요비 돈이 멋질 칼라테바도 그런 매비 돈이 다 컨도 쪼버래 니지서는 멋잘 칼라테바니 그런想주지 세요 이렇게 멋질 칼라테바디.
However, and this is the part Geshe said that might be kind of hard to fully have confidence in, but the teachings indicate that if a person gives food to just one being, connected with a motivation of bodhicitta, rooted in love and compassion, the merit that he or she accumulates from giving to that one being will be more than the merit of the person who gave to 100 beings without that motivation, maybe just thinking I'll help them because they're poor or something. The merit of the one with the love, compassion, and bodhicitta motivation is greater.
다때 빼지래 다 대노지더니 다 제와 표현이나 다 짐바동와 이나래 녀래 가르제바 이나에 된다 끊어치 줄라된 로요마 그게 주니 제줄라된 로요마.
So similarly, whatever kind of action we are engaging in, whether acts of charity, whether the acts of making offerings and so forth, any practice that we do, right, whether that becomes a small or great, is determined by the motivation with which it is infused. It is not something that can be determined as powerful or less powerful solely based on outer appearances.
다 개와 체주 던디지가 벌게자 체주 던디지가 지세요. 이자 손지 차수 챈도요. 이자 자보지가 손지 코드 지발 칼라테. 알레미 자침보지 바레스. 하고 살아 다 자보티 다 코드 튜는 땅가로 자체존다보디 스겨서디.
So there's a story actually from the time of Lord Buddha that illustrates this point. And this story relates to when the king of a particular land invited the Buddha and the Sangha to come and partake of an offering of food. And at the time, right, the king had thought, wow, like I've done something pretty meritorious. I've done really well.
자보티에서 고사 만들 때는 뭐지? 하고 살아 그래서 걸어서 사야도 뒤야처럼 이렇게 다 줘버지. 다 뒤가 다 자보티가 들이 야보지서 할래 야보지서 손을 거가와 건 다 들이치는 거대 되도스.
However, at the time that the king was making this offering to the Buddha and the Sangha, there was a beggar woman who lived near the palace. And in her poverty, she gazed towards the offering being made to the Sangha, and she thought, what a wonderful king to be able to make that offering of charity to the Sangha jewel. And she really rejoiced with a thoroughly joyful feeling.
다 개와 체와 특히 그 그 손수 여보 다 댓글로 개자로 말다 기 지서 여로 여보 지고네 대대가 자 된다 손서라 된 쉬마로 왔어.
Yeah, and so the merits that the women outside the palace walls accumulated, right? It was not through the physical act of the offering, but rather by her sincere attitude of rejoicing in that positivity.
다 손지 개와 키치 뭐디 체가 여바데 투일 하고 서 이자.
Yeah.
아니 자보들 거르게 손서 잡지 매자 하고 아니 자보들 밤마트네 들이 개자데 시티 개와데 뭐 그래 다보지.
And so at the time when it came to kind of offer, I guess, the prayer or the praise at the end of the meal, the king, thinking that he had done something really fantastic, he said, he said to Lord Buddha, dedicate the offerings to whoever has accumulated the most merit on this day, right? But the Buddha, seeing that his motivation was kind of tainted by some sort of worldly concern, he began to think of the beggar woman outside.
자보티가 다 되네 자보티 거로 체주 있어 뭐지야 있어 다 개와 개자 시체가 있는데 다 좋은 거잖아.
But the king, being confident, he said to the Buddha, just dedicate to whoever has accumulated the vastest merits today.
아니 소지가 타마 메인전에 거로 미 띵마이는 메인전에 계산 거기 왔어. 메인전이 깔게 실로 모아데 미소 메인전 계산 거 같은 쉰도 왔어.
So when the time for the dedication came, of course, in the tradition of making offerings to the Sangha, at least in the olden times, the name of the benefactor was read out. And the Buddha actually said the name of the woman who was living outside the palace walls.
어따따니 자보 코드 제 밥에 할래서 말했어. 거로선 도시 몸부터 갈래 뭐 잘래가 쳐라.
So the king and the ministers were kind of surprised and maybe even a little bit miffed. They were the ones who had made all of the preparations, purchased and arranged the food and so forth. And the only sponsor name that was read out was by this poor woman outside the palace wall.
어따끌로도 지서여로 사 손설라 때는 개자 소소토가 할래야 다때 야침보지래 생각 보소는 도나.
So if we think in the correct way, then the roots of virtue that we can establish through a positive motivation and a sincere attitude of rejoicing in what is wholesome, these can be very significant merits indeed.
어따 대지 셀 템바시는 가도 개와디가 소소가 로조도 녀래 셰피칼 끌로야 보제야. 아니 개와드사는 지서여로 보제야 대지 다 계속 지모래도 왔어.
So it's very important for us to take this story to heart in our study and practice to develop the correct motivation within our mind. And then when we come to the conclusion of our positive activity, that we make a dedication of those merits.
어따 실로를 유니엘을 보게 레카 가제 뭐 자친 보제바 이나에 사자 마치는 치는 로도 만도 다 얘가요 알았어.
If we are somebody who is focused on the outer aspects of dharma, although we might in sort of from the outer appearance look very devout or something, without the motivation, whether that activity actually becomes dharma or not is an open question.
게싱베 구작 다드모 워시에 사와레스 코로다 코로
Geshe Bengunge.
코로로 빠지기 쳔보진 근데 쳔보진 비와이다 기자 대지 할레베 좀아야보 비 다디서 차서서 살 소노 또 그걸 끊어주자지 와이다 근데 탈락을 매바시서 왔어.
There's a very famous story in this vein about Geshe Bengunge, one of the great Kadampa Geshes. It is said that he knew that an important teacher was coming to visit, so he arranged all of the offerings on his shrine really beautifully. But then as he reflected, seeing that his intention was thoroughly worldly, he became very ashamed and he threw incense dust on those offerings.
코로지도 알레게 찌타디 할레비 이나는 탈락 할레비 또 코로나는 할레비 저는 나왔던 것도 전에 됐대.
And when the guests and the sponsors arrived, they looked to the shrine. It was covered in incense dust. And it is said that Ben Gungel even threw some of the incense dust on his own clothing, and he looked very disheveled.
다 이나요 다는 시고도 받자 아침부터니 다 들어가서 말했어. 제 도버던지 다 배고젤 제가 데려가서 주마소.
But the holy being, the preeminent holy being of that region, someone who could understand things very thoroughly, he said that the supreme practice of offerings is performed by Geshe Bengunge.
Oh, that in the songs, that get a more than Mandro. Yeah,
So there's lots to discuss about that, but we should continue with the text. So we're towards the end of page 8.
Oh, yeah, that do you call it the Tangachicolon, Nipa, Tajachewa, Sungachicolon, Sister Demeli, Tijinayo, Mamoto, Tamokawa, Kawa, Mepato, Umbo Nambi, Unshipi, Wachetewa, Chewa Pa, Shipa, Tar.
Vast skill in means, the attitude of the secret Mantrayāna. The torch of the 3 methods says of the secret Mantrayāna. It has the same goal, but is free from all confusion. It is rich in methods and without difficulties. It is for those with sharp faculties. The mantra vehicle is sublime.
Oh, that didn't work.
So, of course, a verse explaining like the characteristics of secret mantra.
Oh, Jachewa, Sungachicolon, say, I think that Teji Nayo, Mamoto, say, Teji, Chitbo.
Yeah.
Teji, say, I don't want Nika that on it. Tewachimbi, Toya, Sunjimba, Jibare.
So when it says the same goal in this verse, what is that saying? That both Sutra and Tantra have the same goal of, that both Mahayana Sutra, and Tantra have the same goal of complete enlightenment for the sake of all beings.
Oh, that Yina, Tawa Lumumba to Mamupi, Chevachi.
But in terms of the view, there is a view that is slightly confused and totally lacking in confusion.
Oh, that do you call in a Tawa Yuta, but Tawa Yashu Tanda Kodra is a Mumba.
So confusion here, Geshe said, so confusion here, we understand that it's just that the sutra isn't able to kind of point to the very last kind of effective method that we need to use. And for that reason, it's being posited as confused. But we need to clarify here, right? When we speak about the difference between sutra and tantra, the object that we're trying to realize is the same. It's from the point of view of the object possessor, we would say yulchen, but in English, you could also say the subject. From the point of view of the subject, that the differences are significant. Yeah, and also there are a richer variety of methods in Tantra. So even if we just think of all of the various facets of the generation and completion stage of highest yoga tantra, this is a rich set of skillful means. But it's really important to understand that the final view that one realizes, right, that is like the same in sutra as it is in tantra. Yes. The view from the side of the object is the same in sutra and tantra. And we understand also that if we look to how the life of Shakyamuni manifested, it was over many eons that he practiced and gradually reached the 10th bhumi, Sachuparwa, the 10th bhumi of a bodhisattva. So it is said, having reached the 10th bhumi, then just to get that little bit further that was left of his journey, it became necessary for the Buddha to be arisen from meditation. He received Abhisheka, Vajrayāna empowerment, and meditated over the course of the night and was enlightened by that morning. So because of his thorough and long engagement with the very highest aspects of the sutra path, when he received empowerment, it is said that the enlightenment unfolded very quickly. He didn't need to engage so thoroughly in all of the skillful means of tantra, but because of his previous exertion, he was able to achieve enlightenment quickly. So yeah, when we speak about this Geshe said story, but not really story, we could say the history of the Buddha's enlightenment. There are many things that are revealed there.
Yeah, so and also in this context, when we speak about sharp and limited faculties, we're speaking about sharp faculties in terms of Mantrayāna, tantric practitioners, and limited faculties as those who focus solely on sutra. But also within the sutra practices themselves, there are said to be some that are designed for those of limited faculties and some of those designed for sharp faculties. So it depends upon context. So one way that this is discussed in the sutra teachings is that the practitioner who focuses on developing the view of emptiness and then realizes bodhicitta is considered to be of sharp faculties, and the one who focuses on the method practices and arises bodhicitta before really engaging with emptiness is said to be the disciple of limited faculties. Yes. Nganso lam chi kawadrogres dopa yona dene michambodi kechichina dene lam degarang res. So, for example, we can think of a person who needs to take a journey to a particular place. If the person is planning their journey, they may go to somebody who is considered knowledgeable or experienced, and they say, how do I get to that destination? And then they'll say, just follow this road and you'll get where you need to go. Based upon that person's reputation as somebody reliable, somebody important, then the traveler will depart. This traveler is likened to the person of limited faculties. So sort of connected with that analogy, then the dull faculty practitioner, they look perhaps at the scriptures and they say that the Buddha taught bodhicitta, and the Buddha explained that if one arises bodhicitta, this will allow one to achieve Buddhahood. And then the Buddha said it, so I'm going to do that. And on that basis, they practiced. This is the disciple of limited faculties. But the sharp faculty disciple, he or she may think that, okay, the Buddha is a holy, understands a lot of things, but are sentient beings really precious in the way that he says they are? Is enlightenment something that is truly achievable? Is this path something that is verifiable? And they kind of proceed in this scrutinizing way. This is the way of the disciple of sharp faculties. So the sharp faculty disciple, until through his or her own experience, sees that it is really possible to overcome, for example, the ignorance grasping at the self, they do not fully enter into that path. And so it's a good motivation too, though, because through this kind of scrutinizing approach, once they're able to realize emptiness, then the facets of many of the other paths will unfold more easily. They'll be clear. So when we say limited faculties, it's not to be understood as something bad or negative, right? Like it's actually usually people translate it as dull faculties, but because, Geshe and I think also the texts don't have that negative connotation, I think translating it as limited faculties is a bit better. But if someone has another word, let me know. But the sharp faculty disciple, he or she, isn't just kind of proceeding on the basis of like, oh, the teacher who preaches this is so precious, therefore I must do it. They're checking the veracity of every step of what that teacher says.
The Mantrayāna can be entered by many routes. It contains many methods for accumulating merit and wisdom and profound, skillful means to make the potential within us manifest, without our having to undergo great hardships. The basis for these methods is the way we direct our aspirations. Everything is circumstantial and depends entirely on one's aspiration. So really, it's by saying it depends on one's aspiration, it really depends on transforming one's mind. Another thing that should be mentioned here is that when we speak about achieving Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, complete Buddhahood, from the point of view of Sutra, this is said to require an accumulation and cultivation over 3 incalculable eons. But for the ideal practitioner of the Mantrayāna, it is possible to accumulate the same merits in one human body in one lifetime. Do not consider the place where the Dharma is being taught, the teacher, the teachings, and so on, as ordinary and impure. As you listen, keep the 5 perfections clearly in mind. So Geshe is just explaining that this part of the text is really kind of explaining the tantric context of how to view the teacher and the Dharma and so forth. So he doesn't think we need to go into a lot of explanation here, but just to kind of sum up, it's about trying to see the place where the teaching is being given as the celestial palace of the deity, and then to contemplate that Vajrayāna view of the teacher being in the form of, for example, Chakra Samvara or Vajrayogini or something like that. So Geshe is, so maybe I should ask the audience what they want. Geshe is going to read quickly through the text in Tibetan so that the transmission is complete. Do people want me to follow by reading it in English or not? What do people think is good? You do want me to read in English? Okay, I will try to go a little bit fast so we don't take up too much time. Yes. Just like read fast, Ngodrup. Okay, I'm gonna.
Oh yeah, ne pasu tsuba gumu chi chi po chung, temba pasu tsuba chi kenda zumbu ko pasu tsuba jawa gunji rinzi daji semba semba lato lamo yi roji da saada yuna chi chebi ne teni sundu paji ro pema ge jo po chung chi chebi lama teni oji pema june rungre chi nyenbi ko no chung rinzi je jembo nyenga po kandi roji da saada yuna pasu tsuba shashu nyenba ga yi shi go temba pasu tsuba nungshe zubi kato je semba ko do je ri je lazu semba do seme roje da sada yona ne pasu tsuba nungshu dewa jenji shiko temba pasu tsuba suje noa ta yike pa merwa ko pasu tsuba pema ri je lazu semba do sema lado lami roje da sada ngota chi tewa chenbo ti taba jonjo kowa yene yamba la yamba shibi lo ja.
Yeah, Do not consider the place where the Dharma is being taught, the teacher, the teachings, and so on as ordinary and impure. As you listen, keep the 5 perfections in mind. The perfect place is a citadel of the absolute expanse called Akanishta, the unexcelled. The perfect teacher is Samantabhadra, the Dharmakaya. The perfect assembly consists of the male and female bodhisattvas and deities, of the mind lineage of the conquerors, and of the symbol lineage of the Vidyadharas. Or you can think that the place where the Dharma is being taught is the lotus-like palace of the glorious copper-colored mountain. The teacher who teaches is Padmasambhava of Odayana, and we, the audiences, are the 8 Vidyadharas, the 25 disciples, and the Dakas and Dakinis. Or consider this perfect place as the Eastern Buddha field, manifest joy, where the perfect teacher, Vajrasattva, the perfect Sambhogakaya, is teaching the assembly of the divinities of the Vajra family and male and female bodhisattvas. Equally well, the perfect place where the Dharma is being taught can be the Western Buddha field, the blissful, the perfect teacher, the Buddha Amitabha, and the assembly of the male and female bodhisattvas and deities of the lotus family. Whatever the case, the teaching is that of the great vehicle, and the time is the ever-revolving wheel of eternity. These visualizations are to help understand how things are in reality. It is not that we are temporarily creating something that does not really exist.
다 단달로에 대다르 사다바 대도 좀 대다 연바라 연바 시바 셰발리 마인바시 아니 마인바시 제 산데바 머데 라마나 디선제 수지 토지진 디비다니 그 겐도 수동지 투 수지 증거와데 깨주 근데 그 라마 수이돔 그 라마 수이돔 투 칸로데 자스 근데 그 수루个투 치거데 그스 근데 니비 수지 토지제 저바 마고베 수지 토지진 주게 다디 수지 토지제 자자 가와좀비 수지 동기 좀 마터베 용리 니미 세제노 지선지비 투지에도 까지지 니네 수지 토지엘이 좀 하바 이데 지게더 라마 수지 라마지 대제 라마 겐데 근제 셰보 라마 바데 도제 좀 오신바 따동.
The teacher embodies the essence of all Buddhas and throughout the three times. He is the union of the three jewels. His body is the Sangha, his speech the Dharma, his mind the Buddha. He is the union of the three roots. His body is the teacher. His speech is the Hidam, his mind the Dakini. He is the union of the three Kayas. His body is the Nirmana Kaya, his speech the Sambhoga Kaya, his mind the Dharma Kaya. He is the embodiment of all Buddhas of the past, source of all Buddhas of the future, and the representative of all Buddhas of the present. Since he takes as his disciples degenerate beings like us, whom none of the 1,000 Buddhas of the good Kalpa could help, his compassion and bounty exceed that of all Buddhas. The teacher is the Buddha, the teacher is the Dharma, the teacher is the Sangha, the teacher is the one who accomplishes everything, the teacher is the glorious Vajradhara. We, as the assembly gathered to listen to the teachings, use the basis of our own Buddha nature, the support of our precious human life, the circumstance of having a spiritual friend, and the method of following his advice to become the Buddhas of the future. The Vajra Tantra states, all beings are Buddhas, but this is concealed by adventitious stains. When their stains are purified, their Buddhahood is revealed.
오야 다 디스와 다 디고데 베야보 롱레 치년비 코노 좀 이제데셰님보 데멀르시 제게 지니 타디 동아게 선비 마고베 수지 이데 지 따니레 세제노는 수지니게 졸로가 점미드 So
Geshe said this particular verse is really important because we need to think about what we have, the Buddha nature, the precious human life, the circumstances of a spiritual friend, and so forth. And then this quote, particularly important, all beings are Buddhas, but this is concealed by adventitious stains. When their stains are purified, their Buddhahood is revealed.
So
Geshe said, this is talking about the Tathagata Garbha, right? The Tathagata essence. Another way of talking about this is the Buddha nature. And we've mentioned many times how people say that, it is because of the presence of this Tathagata Garbha that all beings are said to be Buddhas. So from this verse also, we understand that it is through clearing away these adventitious stains that are covering the Tathagata, covering this potential, that the fact of one being a Buddha, or that we could say that perhaps instead the potential is ripened and Buddhahood becomes manifest. So in this way, we've spoken a lot about the motivation and so forth, and now we're talking about conduct. The right conduct while listening to the teachings is described in terms of what to avoid and what to do. In other words, what to take up and what to abandon. So conduct to avoid includes the 3 defects of the pot, the 6 stains, and the 5 wrong ways of remembering. The three defects of the pot. Not to listen is to be like a pot turned upside down. Not to be able to retain what you hear is like a pot with a hole in it. To mix negative emotions with what you hear is like the pot with poison in it.
他们过去看嘛，就他东部青年比第三种个难以许吧，以前的没有啊，青年比这点了点的年纪，但他马年呢，那看比定的这律叫你纪律吧，懂他的离奇的呢，也种去这种容易没提。
So the upside down pot, when you are listening to the teachings, listen to what is being said and do not let yourself be distracted by anything else. Otherwise, you'll be like an upside down pot on which liquid is being poured. Although you might be physically present, you do not hear a word of the teaching.
但那看表吧，他那看表吧，现在他没过去看，对吧？摸去看摸，要地图了，去看这里吧，有可能那样。
So not a lot to explain here because very simple to understand. If we have a cup that is upside down with its bottom facing up, no matter how much water we pour on top of that cup, nothing's going to get inside.
但电影比较累了，我写吧，因为提手过是电影就落要不去要呢，你看看写色的挂头要的。
So really, actually, when we talk about these three defects of the pot, it's through understanding and engaging in correct hearing, contemplation, and meditation that these defects can be cleared away.
罗里弄了被罗电波没把去别去要，罗里个弄了么东东去干。
罗里
可是说，写的现在接了差的要呢，每个搞的通话音呢，等你可能不给伢头要。
Yes. So in the Lorig teachings, it explains that if the mind is distracted, even if the eye is looking directly at the object you're supposed to be focusing on, it's not going to come into the mind.
他等的起来是阿里的摩托车，你把呢，在他的体皮起点有过路度，提罗让呢，伊拉马瑞呢，那下得动，这种那种全就没把动他的，去这种那种，一度的干的，你是来么西。
The pot with a hole in it, if you just listen without remembering anything that you hear or understand, you will be like a pot with a leak. However much liquid is poured into it, nothing can stay. No matter how many teachings you hear, you can never assimilate them, nor put them into practice.
他没呀，么过去么多那下的话，就因为可能路开始罗啊，伊那样，他罗啊做的嘛都陪同么的可得个嘛，我是。
Also, really no benefit at the end of this picture, right? Because even if we have a pot, if there is a hole in it, no matter how much water we pour into the pot, even if it fills the pot, because of the hole, we know eventually all of it is going to come out.
看个嘛，自己去有我是。
Yeah.
如果他开始做啊，伊那其实都是个呀，他嘛去那个那可以。
So this is like the example that we've given before, which is the example of this animal. I think it's a type of weasel or a type of marmot that catches mice. So it puts out its hand to catch the mouse and then uses the other hand to hit its head. But as it does that, it lifts its backside, and the previous mouse it caught scampers away. And in this way, it ends up without a meal. So don't be like that.
他的阿拉的真的吧，他得了他你当个来的意思，他嘛看住着，你叫啥的？其实我是对你个逻辑呢，那这些说的，他不搞呀个，他不给啊。
So a mind that sincerely strives towards correct hearing, contemplation, and meditation, this is the antidote to the three defects of the pot.
呀，咱就不一的。
Let's go. That's just saying, let's go, but I just want to make sure I mark where we left off for next time. Pardon me. Loso. So we're going to turn now to the Long Life Sutra.
呀，他东你那个呀个，可给讲着我理解起好，我是的，各种理解多少的，他东你那个用多听这些个是。
So in terms of this particular sutra, it was mentioned how the sutra always begins like with the preamble. And so in terms of the preamble, actually, we've covered all of that. So we are now in the part of the actual sutra.
这什么？东你那当然过去要嘛的，但是做的。
Ale, oh, sorry. So we've completed the preamble, but there's a little bit left before the main part of the sutra. My apologies.
他这个呀个可不严重着不起的是。
So still a little bit of initial points.
가서 리즈도 자서 왔어. 나들 릴롱아 스담 된다. 어떤 지 세기가레스.
링지당 링롱was.
릴롱아스 이렇게 잘리와. 도가야. 계장년도 들이와.
Okay, so we've completed the preamble, and now there are, how would I describe this? I would describe this as the kind of speech that brings forth the sutra. Maybe we could say it like that.
대니 도송아 쪼덴데 진좀바지는 잡발라 까짜바 깐들 단도 조수사든 조지사만 요바이 마스 가서
Yep. So then the destroyer qualified gone beyond one, granted discourse to the youthful Manjushri. So here we understand that Manjushri is not as in his enlightened aspect, but he's in his divine bodhisattva aspect.
당가도 지금 돼야 보면 빼나 소지 쪼덴데 그 조지사만 좀바를 단 좀바 생각 다 계시기 바래스.
Yeah. So the destroyer qualified gone beyond one. This is the Buddha, and he is speaking to Manju Gosha, the youthful Manjushri.
좀바 띵게쇼나 산지대제코 예때빠다 매바시샤와시요 띵게쇼스네 고말.
There is a world above called unfathomable qualities. So above here indicates that this is a higher realm. It is one of the higher realms.
그래서 대나 대지셔바다 좀 모여다봐 주변 손지 세도 이제 빠다 매바시 어네 신도 넘방에 봐 지지지자보 시샤와시 유요.
There, so in that place, the Tathagata, having destroyed the enemy, the fully completed Buddha, called unfathomable life and transcendental wisdom, extremely discerning aspect, victorious glorification, is abiding, revealing the dharma to sentient beings while holding and completing the life.
넘바 가리고는 유야래 세나 손지 하고서라 로끼가 넘베지는 유야네.
So when we speak about this Buddha, unfathomable life and transcendental wisdom, if we speak about his aspect, we can understand that it is an aspect of the enjoyment body, an aspect of the Sambhogakaya. And it is said that the enjoyment body or Sambhogakaya, it has 5 particular qualities. And the other thing too is revealing the dharma to the sentient beings. The dharma that is being revealed here is the Mahayana dharma. And also we understand that from the preamble that the place, we understand that, that in this world they are not ordinary beings, but it is all holy beings, Arya Bodhisattvas. Sangeti. And this Sambhogakaya or enjoyment body, one of the qualities, so the quality of the retinue, sorry, give me a moment. Nanso tanda longku kecho ngala girwa, tambodi kor, ane nipadi? Nipadi?
Nipa chingeba. Chi.
Yeah. Sumpa? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I just want to get the numbers of all these things for you so that the 5 are clear. So the first of the 5 characteristics or excellences of the Sambhogakaya is an excellent retinue. The second, so that's all that it's, Arya Bodhisattvas and so forth abiding in this realm. The second is the excellence of the Dharma, meaning that it is the Mahayana Dharma that is spoken. The third excellence has to do with time. And in this context, time is indicating that that enjoyment body or Sambhogakaya will abide until samsara is ended. Jipa? And the fourth is an excellent abode. So this is an abode within the higher realms, not within the lower realms. Kor punsum sopa, ne punsum sopa, che punsum sopa, du punsum sopa.
당가
Shira punsun sopa maribe.
그렇지도 이렇게 나 제마서 야고.
Geshe can't remember the fifth. So
신경 대체 진바시스와 딩야바 코아니스 마도고 봐도 줘봐. 내가 봐 내가 뭐 권하라 줘봐. 와. 다지도 제마서 이마갈라기스.
yeah, so remind us to tell you what the fifth of these excellence is, and Geshe will have it ready for next time. Sorry about that.
리스와 다 된다 손지 쫓는데 이나 좀벌레데 페페 깔라데 우무지 이나 내가 우무는 로그지 유아. 이쪽바레스.
So actually, one thing that we can say here is that Buddha Shakyamuni, the body that he appeared in this world, right, in our Saha world, this was a Nirmanakaya, an emanation body, while the enjoyment body was actually abiding in Ogmin. So I believe that's Tibetan for Akanishta. Ogmin la shuyere. Yeah. So Buddha Shakyamuni was actually the emanation body of a Sambhogakaya form that is in Akanishta. But the particular type of Nirmanakaya or emanation body that Buddha Shakyamuni was is known as a Chod Severance. That's a supreme emanation body. Yeah, and also sorry, Jiangchu Semagi Nampa ine konso Ronku Yangyure. Okay, so the same is actually true of Manjushri. Although he is appearing in a divine bodhisattva aspect in the context of this sutra, that's a bodhisattva emanation coming from a Sambhogakaya, which is also abiding in a higher realm. Loso. Loso. So really, we understand that when any sentient being is enlightened, so it's like when enlightenment kind of unfolds, its main aspect is this aspect of the Sambhogakaya. So all four of the bodies or three of the bodies are present together, but the main focus as that enlightenment unfolds is the Sambhogakaya. DJ Buddhi. Okay. So I was asking Geshe, I said, we said that the Sambhogakaya is kind of the main one or the important aspect here. Why is that the case, actually? And his answer is because this Sambhogakaya is a result that matches the cause. All of the work that you did over those incalculable eons to get to Buddhahood manifests as this result of the Sambhogakaya enjoyment body that is going to reside until samsara is empty of sentient beings. So it is a result similar to the cause. Yeah, so Geshe said it's nice when things fit together like that, and the result is something that's really similar to the cause. And that's also, as we reflect on the meaning of this, we can say, that's where I'm going to go. Like, that's what I'm going to achieve when I get enlightened. And that could be kind of very encouraging to think about. Okay. So also, speaking of the supreme emanation body, the Chokitruku, the supreme Nirmanakaya, these supreme Nirmanakayas only arise at very specific times. And also Geshe was explaining that the supreme Nirmanakaya also has a manifestation of the Mahaparinirvana, the passing away. And so from amongst those supreme emanation body Buddhas, Shakyamuni is even standing out amongst them because it is said that amongst the Buddhas of this aeon, he is the one who said that he would appear at a time of a strife, at one of the most kind of degenerate times within kind of the continuum of samsara. So for that reason, it's also a preeminent quality. And then there's another challenge that after this time of degeneration, then the world starts to get better and better and better and better. And there's a time where outer circumstances are so pleasing that beings have very little thought of even wanting to do any spiritual practice or think about the dharma. And it is said that that is a time that is also challenging. And it is at that time that the Buddha, Maitreya, will appear in the world.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah. And so as we continue with the sutra, it is talking about kind of the various qualities of this Buddha and so forth. Di nga kogi mendus ngarang yena dene jampe yang zambulingi midin so konso lo ja dapo ale. Oh, okay. So the fully completed Buddha called unfathomable life and transcendental wisdom, extremely discerning aspect. Okay, this is a bit unusual here. Extremely discerning aspect. Not saying that Rinpoche's translation isn't fantastic. It's just Rory's mind, Ngodrup's mind is limited. Extremely discerning aspect, victorious glorification. So this is the quality that Geshe is describing. Yeah. Wong Chu. It's in a top chu double chi. Wong po chenpo double. So it's not immediately clear from this phrase, extremely discerning aspect, victorious glorification, but actually what is being mentioned here is that the Buddha, who we're going to be talking about in this sutra of Amitayus, he has kind of, I would say, 10, I don't know, can you say powerfulnesses? That probably doesn't work in English, but you know what I mean. So 10 powerful characteristics. So one is a power of life. And so this power of life means a lifespan that just goes on and on and on for however long they want it to. And so, for example, this is why achieving this siddhi of kind of this long lifespan, that's still being achieved. So there's said to be a disciple of Nagarjuna who is still present in India who achieved this siddhi. Yeah. Tongse Lama. Okay. Loso. Oh, Loso. Yeah. Yeah, so there is Tongse Lama, which from what I understood, Tongse Lama is one of the lamas who brought the Dharma from India to the land of China. And Tongse Lama was said to have received Dharma instruction directly from that disciple of Nagarjuna who had a lifespan in excess of like 300 or 400 years. Yeah. So he was able from that very long life Lama to receive the Dharma directly. And this was said to be kind of a very nice circumstance because although Nagarjuna had passed away, this Chinese Lama, he was able to receive teachings directly from his disciples who had heard the words directly from Nagarjuna's mouth. So that set up like a very nice line of transmission.
Lama tinjiga na chishi son mombo dia is the
Lama Ijibjate.
Oh.
So some say that this Lama is still living, and so Chobodi. So he has a friend of Geshe-la's who was kind of like doing a lot of meditative practice and kind of searching for this Lama, but he was never able to meet him. So he was a little bit disappointed. Yeah, tell me more about it later. So within these kind of 10 powerfulnesses, the first has to do with life. The second is karma. Kewa? Kewa mitapa. Kewa. The third is births or rebirths. Yeshe. The fourth is exalted wisdom. Yeah. So in those ways, we've covered 4, and we'll cover the balance next time. So the third one, a powerfulness of rebirth, means that wherever this being wants to go, in whatever land or form they want to be reborn in, they can do that. Yeah, and so of course, these things are all things that as one reaches high levels of realization, they unfold and become possible. And when we say high level of realization, Geshe is explaining the direct realization of emptiness. When that has been achieved, we can begin to speak of a high level of realization. And so think, with this as a very nice goal, right? I'm going to study and practice in a happy and relaxed way towards unfolding that. So thanks very much. We shall end here. Let us do a brief dedication of the merits. So we should be on page 28, but unfortunately some of the booklets, we have some guests today. Unfortunately, some of the booklets are different, but mine is 28. Chod Severance, Maje Panam Jejurchi, Jeban Yamba Meba Yang Gone Gondu Bewar Sho Tongni Tawa Rinpoche, Maje Panam Jejurchi, Jeban Yamba Meba Yang Gone Gondu Bewar Sho. 37. Jambe Pao Jidar Kemba Tang Kundu Zambo Deyan Dejinde Deda Kungi Jesu Dalo Jir Gewa Dida Tamje Rabdungo Dusun Shebe Gyawa Tamshegi Ngowa Gangla Jodu Ngapade Dagi Gewe Tsawa Dikun Kyong Zambu Chuji Radu Ngowa. Through the merits accumulated by myself and others, we dedicate these to all evil and unwholesome minds of beings being cleared away and replaced with minds of kindness. Through these merits, we think of in particular His Holiness the Dalai Lama, but all wise and knowing spiritual beings, for them to be able to have long lives and for their wishes to be accomplished exactly. and all 6 types of sentient beings through the blessings of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas falling like rain. May they be completely cleared of any physical suffering, of any mental suffering. So we'll pause there and just let me put the volume up and then we could take questions if people have them.
So while Kedra was doing that, I just want to mention our mission here at Lamia Shling is for all of us to develop dharma realizations. So our programs are offered freely to give you the opportunity to increase your virtue by supporting the dharma through generosity. For this is the most powerful way to create the causes for developing a deep understanding and a happy mind. So there's an opportunity here to do that. Just thought I'd mention that once in a while. I placed in the chat our donation form. Go ahead.
I can't see, the sun is shining in a way that I can't see the screen so well.
So Venerable Lobsang Tendron, you have
yes,
your hand
please
up.
go ahead. Venerable
Go ahead.
Tendron.
Hi. Geshe mentioned that if there were time, he would tell a story of Akutumpa. Would he do that now?
Yes, he did mention that. Yes. Tutu yuna Akutumpa kola drungche shegin base.
Thank you.
He says, yeah, he's thinking, but first we have to see how many questions there are.
Okay.
It's short. Why don't we just do it? We'll do it, Venerable Tendron. We'll do it. Yeah. Uh-huh. And so Akutumpa stories are kind of told understanding his intelligence and for the sake of intelligence. Yeah. So the stories of Akutumpa are really to kind of sharpen one's intelligence. And so Akutumpa, he subsisted on the Tibetan staple of tsampa, roasted barley flour, but his tsampa was of a really inferior quality. It was yellow in color and it was commonly eaten by poor people. Yeah, so it was different than the regular kind of tsampa, and it was seen as something really of kind of inferior quality. And so Akutumpa went to see one of his relatives, maybe a cousin, and he said to him, I have some things to do, so can you hold on to my yellow tsampa for me? So his cousin refused Akutumpa, saying, and maybe for some reason he was uncomfortable. He said, my house doesn't have like any space that's really suitable for me to keep your tsampa. So why don't you take it somewhere else? And then Akutumpa said, of course you have a place. Wherever you, in kind of the barrel where you store your own tsampa, just throw my tsampa in with that. Of course you have a place. Yeah. And Akutumpa's yellow tsampa, it wasn't a large quantity. It could almost fit into his hand. So Akutumpa threw his yellow tsampa into the high quality tsampa of his cousin, and he kind of with his hand mixed it all together. And then Akutumpa would keep visiting his cousin and would dip his hand to the barrel and enjoy some of the tsampa. Yeah. And then the cousin, eventually he started to feel like a little bit kind of stingy about it. And he said, actually the amount of tsampa that you've put in, you've already taken more than that. So there's no more tsampa for you. And then Akutumpa said, no, the tsampa has not been exhausted. Look into the barrel and there's still some of it left. So Akutumpa put his hand into the barrel, lifted up a handful of tsampa, and there were a few flecks of the yellow colored tsampa in there. And he said, see, My portion is still there.
He
He kind of counted each of those yellow grains and said, still there's some of my tsampa here. Yeah. So in fact, he kind of continued to come to that cousin's house until the tsampa was nearly finished. So our dedication of merits is like that act of putting the yellow tsampa into that big barrel of the white tsampa. It becomes inexhaustible. So that's why Geshe thought of that story. It's a little bit like that glass of water being put into the lake or the ocean, right? Yeah. Yes. So these stories are often told when holy beings are describing this process of meditation. Yeah. So Akutumpa really, these stories are kind of aimed at sharpening our intelligence, right? By way of these parables. And you see also that Akutumpa himself was very intelligent because, in his hand, he had maybe 1 or 2 days of food, but by throwing it into the tsampa barrel and mixing it together, he was able to have food for an exponentially longer period of time. Yeah, so Venerable Tendran, thank you I think that was a good story. So thank you for asking for that one. Anybody else? Questions?
Yes, we have a question coming in from Katya on Facebook.
Sure.
Starting from vacuum, which is ultimate truth for Vaibhashika, can a scientist throughout the 4 schools and their ultimate truth meanings reach to understand emptiness and formulate it scientifically?
Oh my goodness. I'm not following at all. Sorry. Can you read it really slowly? Like, I don't even know how to say vacuum in Tibetan. Is it just like void? Is that what we're talking about?
Absence of any matter is vacuum.
Absence of any matter. Okay, I'll try that. And then can you read me the rest of the question again, please?
Starting from vacuum, which is ultimate truth for Vaibhashika, can a scientist throughout or thought or throughout the 4 schools and their ultimate truth meanings?
What? I don't understand at all.
Yeah, can a scientist understand emptiness and format it scientifically from understanding the 4 schools of?
Oh, of tenets, you mean?
Yes, the four schools. So
I'm not sure how that goes together with the vacuum.
Yeah, there's some mixed metaphors, perhaps.
Can we ask for clarification?
Yeah. Tenets. Yeah, she says tenets.
Tenets. Okay. And can we leave the part of the vacuum out?
Yeah. So can a scientist understand emptiness and formate it scientifically?
Okay, yes. Okay, sorry. Yes, okay, sorry. I have my limitations. Vacuum is, I have to look up that word. If someone knows the Tibetan for vacuum, please say it to me. Senrikpa yena rwa horonso di nganso dze mepa gi netso chik tongni dabo chik re duas. Dene senri gi drotang la tene honso drupta mawaji gi tongpani kotu girebes.
Meta kotogrebe senator ta koro semeto se adlila yamanes matotka garo tanyo ta rapa dinu tenendo togres.
So Geshe thinks, yes, that the scientists, through their own methodology, they can come to like at least a general or a rougher understanding of the meanings of these 4 schools of tenets in terms of emptiness, but in terms of actually achieving the sema, the pramana, or the valid cognition, that's something a little more difficult. Yeah, so understanding it logically kind of as a principle, definitely through scientific methodology, but being able to develop this pramana and to change that, and on the basis of that to develop it into an antidote for the afflictions, that might be more difficult. But of course, that process, right, and their method, it can be a great assisting factor to practice, certainly.
단다이나이 다 베게 팀이야 근데 돈 연도는 더 뭐서 길라바 체리케라 전부 아래 되지
Yeah.
건서 제왕아실이 지요선 쓰고서 문제 세기도 왔어.
And some, in fact, with these mind and life dialogues of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, especially when interfacing with like cognitive scientists, some of them are actually open to the concept of past and future lifetimes, for example.
딱 대가이나 미나 된다 저다마 와지도 따와도 데 왔는데 콘도페 토아치 모여 알았어.
But in terms of the four schools of tenets and the kind of actual views that are being expressed, definitely through their scientific principles or methods, they can come to a feeling for those.
요mon니 레바 체리밖에 라 침보지 ng만ng만에 근데로 저로서 다메 세대 체리 주는 단다 쓰고도 지와 말했더니 건조 지와래 잘라 말했더니 대ten데 라이 만두.
So one German scientist commented to His Holiness that, you know, in your scriptures where it speaks of selflessness, this is something that kind of really makes sense and is a very deep meaning, right? And so like science is kind of saying that there has to be some sort of self, but the reasonings of the selflessness are very sound.
체리 코로스 그 따르고 노노로 간가 저렇게 셔봐 보지 야래자 아주 잘해. 이나 대ten데 매 타지래.
He was saying to His Holiness that, you know, in scientific principles, we say that there always has to be an agent or a doer as we are looking at how things unfold or how causes unfold. But actually, the way that Buddhism is explaining things in terms of selflessness really makes sense.
다 단다이나 가시 루지피 따와도 할레빈 저 와치 뭐 가시 단지와도 다 단지와도 간갈 배도 알아. 와서 가시 세점도 저 와치 뭐 담은다.
So some scientists, you know, their findings are a little bit akin to what we'll see in the mind only, the Chittamantran school. Some are akin to what we find in Madhyamika Sautantrika, and some are what we find, some of their findings are akin to what we find in Madhyamika Prasangika.
레레 집밥 먹어 요기하게 땐데로 와서 시고레. 체레스는 열째 와셔도 단라고 먹어요. 와서.
So definitely there will be some similarities, because in terms of how an object is actually examined in this process of investigation, there are a lot of parallels between like the scientific and the Buddhist ways of doing that. So thank you so much. And Katya, thank you so much for clarifying your question. And now you've got me curious about the word vacuum in Tibetan. So I'll have that ready for next time. Any other questions?
Martha has a question. Go ahead, Martha.
Hi, Martha, go ahead.
Well, two things. First, that I could not attend yesterday's teaching, so maybe you can explain me how can I see the video?
Yeah, I can do that, Martha.
Okay, and the other one is, well, you know, sometimes these thoughts that come to your mind of hatred, jealousy, you know, these bad thoughts you have, and then you realize and you see them. So then what you have to do, because I feel very bad with myself, I say, why am I thinking this? Oh, I'm so ugly. So how can I change this immediately? Or what I have to do in that moment that I realize that I have these terrible thoughts?
Yeah, nganso sem kaplola ya nganso samsam di halepe tangsem shukchampo yore traktok shukchampo yope kapula dene denso sem leb padaga dene halepe duksha chik lebsons roi sem denso karechene yongi yores dene nganso sem shuk chayagi nenso dabo chik dua ane soso kyun denso tongne sem shuk chayagi tutsu di kaplola ya kandes chik soguresa.
가래 저도도.
Yeah. Ko ngotsagirerwa sem halepe duksha denso yotsang dene semtes chobo dabochi chagi yotsarerwa di kaplola kandes chik samlo tangas.
매매다 대 코로스가 세 가르래 봐이나 피체가 가르 바치서 가르래 봐이나 뒤년보 가르는 바네.
So really it's a process. Actually, this is positive in that we're recognizing which of the afflictions is the most prominent. In other words, is the most troubling within our mind. So the next step is just to identify what the antidote is that we need to apply to that.
세 아포텔 때 디세레 원냐는 소설 배도도 계속 대야와야 보시.
And if we keep this antidote in our mind and we're able to hold on to it in our mind for longer times, there are going to be a lot of benefits. And so, for example, those minds that arose that troubled us, they will not as easily arise.
어쩌지다 때 매봐서야 달헬레 지내를 사게차게 뭐서 헬레 지내 단때 매봐서야 한 년보 먹어요. 소지 그거 안에서.
And the other thing is, don't get nervous.
So when you've noticed that mind's arisen, don't kind of get nervous and be hard on yourselves. Be relaxed about it and say, okay, this mind, this affliction is arising. What are the antidotes that I've learned through the teachings that I need to apply? That's what you should do.
다 디년보 고자네 수켈 까만 카시 냥귤 까마 카시 군달 까마 카시 자네 단다 가서 가서 로지 뭐시에 사이바스.
So, and this is a gradual process, right? So we would meditate upon that antidote to those afflictions that are prominent, maybe for like 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the afternoon, 5 minutes before bed, and slowly we'll be more able to use it, you know, and we've told many stories, right, about how it starts in those small increments.
제가 이제 다 끝리라 워추는 거야지. 다 그게 오강에 그게 뒤쪽에 갈래 롱롱 말와스.
And so what you'll find is as you slowly cultivate this antidote, slowly you're able to apply it, and that mind that you saw that that ugly mind, to use your words, Martha, that you saw, this will slowly begin to dissipate. So in fact, that's what we have to do, really.
저도 라고지는 할래게요 말 거기 내서 다 템버식 토소요안도 토소된도 따야시라요 말에 선수 지금 하네.
And also in terms of jealousy specifically, you know, when we're experiencing that jealousy, we just have to see like these manifestations of those difficult things. That's just how samsara is. Sometimes things will go really well for people and very successful for people, and at other times it's not going to be like that. So hopefully, Martha, that answered your question, but come back if you have another one. Is there anyone else? You guys are quiet today. Dave, is there anything on socials?
Anything else there? Let me check. Yes, somebody has a question, but they haven't asked it yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm just
Well,
responding.
let's give a minute or two, and then maybe if there's no questions, we end 2 or 3 minutes early today. I'm cool with that as long as you guys are.
Standing by.
Standing by.
Charmaine on Facebook said, I have a question, so I'm waiting for her to type.
Oh,
the
Charmaine,
question.
yes, please. Yeah. Maybe she stepped away.
It's hard to tell if.
I think maybe we.
Yeah.
I don't know how long we should wait for the Facebook question. How patient's everyone feeling? So nothing's
Here
there,
we go.
Dave.
Here we go. Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
For a sutra practitioner,
Yeah.
if they need tantra to reach full enlightenment, would they be abiding in nirvana?
Oh, interesting. Okay. Do ginyamlin chegin yina dene koronso kandesla gore jangshub tobiala ngak nyamlen chegana dene konso ngak inesu gude sadi nyangen le degi sacha direbes nyangen le depa tarpa tobiagi nedi rwa
간스
nyangen le de rwa
미미 된다 가르 더 가르레스
do ginyamlen chegen yina koronso ngak zul gogire duas mato jen konso jangshub togi omares konso ngak gokap raya gude pe kapala konso nyangen le de la degirebes chiwadir
그때 갈스는 양엘은 되어서 가르세고 너 단연을 쉐키 딱 그대서 소도로 요보 자산행 인주 정지 생각 답에 따라서 저 첨벌래서나 아니 주기지 알았어 단단한 주기지 알았어 갈세
ine konso kawa gude gires di ngak matu bardu da goji kosamso dire du nganso tek men netso denso konso jangchu gisem makena konso di nyamshak chik degire duas hale petitserin bochi
그때도 다좀 말아왔어 다좀 말이 된다 대야지 아까서
ale ine dinamra yomares
명가로서 단단 그냥 단단히 담아서 왔어
ale okay
양엘은 님은 늦게쯤에 와서 나로서
so it's not a question of nirvana. It's not a question of nirvana. So it's not a question of nirvana because the nirvana is more of a question where the Hinayana practitioner who hasn't been able to bring forth bodhicitta,
they are abiding there, and then they have to be arisen to kind of bring forth the bodhicitta. But that doesn't seem to be the case with this tantra. Then it goes to kawagudegeres, Mazuba.
So she was good there. Nganzo nujire was good.
Ale.
There's a ton.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's-
So then the tantric practitioner will just be in human form, kind of like waiting wherever until that happens. Yeah, so they'll just be like us abiding in this ordinary form until like the next year or that wherever time that they can enter the tantric teachings. So it's different from the faux destroyer, right? Who is abiding in that state of single-pointed meditative equipoise until they're kind of arisen from that and they bring forth bodhicitta. So it's not the same thing. No problem, no problem. Any other questions?
That's it for today.
Yeah, so
Geshe is saying that like they're not waiting, it's not kind of like in a waiting room of nirvana where they're going to kind of wait until the right time arises. It's not like that. It depends more on factors like when is one going to meet the people who are able to transmit the tantric teachings, and when are they going to be able to receive the empowerment and so forth. It's more related to that. So this idea of them having to abide in nirvana for like a really long time, that's specifically a problem to the Hinayana practitioner who is kind of waiting until they can generate the bodhicitta. So it's like two different things. And so for the faux destroyer, the problem is that in nirvana, the bliss of liberation that they're experiencing is so powerful that they don't want to arise from that. And that's what keeps them, for lack of a better word, I guess, kind of stuck. So it's a little bit like that. Yeah. And so then a certain amount of time will elapse, and then based on the blessings of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, they'll kind of be arisen from that kind of, I guess, slumber of equipoise on that meditative bliss. So for us, it's not like that, like in this context, you know, that like you have to wait in a certain place or something like that until entering those teachings. Yeah, so it's a little different. Yeah. So there are those, right, who are aiming towards enlightenment, but they're doing that sort of wishing to rely exclusively on the teachings of Sutra, right? So it's related to that. Dave, was there another question?
Oh, Sharmin says thank you.
Okay, yeah, good. All right, well then I guess we'll end right at 12 today, unless there's anything else. Thanks everybody for your questions, and see you soon. Take care, everybody.
Yeah,
Geshe gives his Kashi Deli to everybody, and stay happy.